Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast, the show where we uncover what really creates freedom in life and business, and we'll explore stories of those who've learned how to build wealth with purpose.
Welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Today, I'm joined by Charles DeLadurantey, a partner at Private Family Banking Partners, a firm that's all about helping families and business owners break free from traditional banking and create lasting multi-generational wealth. Chuck, welcome to the show.
Hey, Daniel, good to be here. And we're right before the Thanksgiving break, but I don't know when you'll publish this, but happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there.
Yeah. Chuck, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and the work that you do?
So I had a long career in corporate life, and I was introduced to the concept of high cash value whole life insurance, probably 25 years ago. And I had a consulting firm at that time, and I was making quite a bit of money. A guy came to me and he said, you need to really store up some of this cash now because you're young enough and you can get this very high cash value life policy. And he made me a proposal and I walked away from it. Well, 25 years later, I looked over my shoulder and, I said, had I stored up that money, I wouldn't be where I'm at. So I was in my mid 60s at that time. I'm 72 now, so I can relate to the retirement community. And though I'd be working doing something anyway, I think retirement is a mindset. If you think you're going to play golf every day, that's crazy. Not anybody survives that way. So
after a couple of weeks, it becomes reruns. I 100% agree with you on
reruns,
that.
Yeah. So I have lots of things going. I own a cattle ranch here in South Central Texas, and then I do my banking and in my life insurance annuities work. I work with retirees all over the country. But for young families, the problem is to build a legacy. You got to start young, right? If you want a shade tree, you got to plant it now, right? If you want shade in 20 years for your kids and grandkids, you better plant that tree now. So I started out by working with younger families and people even into their 40s. So start basically get their savings away from the banks and sometimes away from 401ks, because, in a 401k, you're going to have this huge tax bill at some point. And by the way, for retirees, that's one concern that we teach them about is if you're building up all this 401k and you don't utilize the Roth modality, you're going to have a huge tax bill you're going to pass on to your kids and your grandkids if you give all that money to them. So there's that tax idea and basically making life less taxing. That's an important thing to understand the tax ramifications. So in private family banking, when you use a high cash value whole life insurance policy, that thing grows over a lifetime, tax deferred or tax protected. And then you can start taking that money out in retirement, much like what's called an index universal life, where you take money out to supplement retirement, and you could do it pretty much tax free if you don't touch don't go beyond the basis. But in the banking system model, you get cash value up front, so you have the luxury of letting it build and not utilizing that cash when you're younger, but you have the option to do that and then later in life take it out with an IUL. Of course, you don't. I know we're product specific there, probably too much for your audience to digest maybe, but private family banking is based on a premise that you've got to become your own banker so that you can leverage the cash that's going to flow through your life anyway. Why let the bank have your money and they're loaning it out to other people when you could be using it for legacy building and having your own privatized family banking system?
Yeah, I mean, it's talking about dual purposing the dollar, right? Or
yes,
triple or quadrupling. So that's essentially
basically using the dollar in more places than once, right? And sometimes if you follow the cascade, you're exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you spent decades guiding others through, financial transitions. What's been kind of most energizing or fulfilling for you through that?
Well, what I like to see is families that start to, when they start thinking about saving more efficiently, I also couple that with helping them envision, okay, where do you want your family to be? What are you going to do? You need to train your children. So I've done some coursework that I offer for free that talks about family legacy, talks about the principles of a family. I partner with another couple that runs a whole training program on how to do all of the will and trust planning and all those kind of things. And we're not all going to be, hugely wealthy, although I do work with very wealthy clients as well, and we'll touch upon that because that's a whole nother model of taxation. When you get into estate tax planning, a lot of attorneys and CPAs don't realize that there is a model out there, and we specialize in it. I partner with another firm who's been in it for 30 years. We take people north of $10 million in net worth, and we can show them how to leverage that money where their kids won't pay that estate tax directly out of the resources and the investments that family has made, the family office, if you will. And we can set up a way to earn that money back and through the life insurance policy to pay that estate tax and beyond. And if they're philanthropic in any way, we as well help multiply donation giving by 5 to 10x. So a lot of foundations, a lot of family foundations and philanthropic worth in hospitals and universities and endowments. The partner I work with has a huge project going in the medical field that's in the billions. So, and that's over a number of families, of course. But back to the idea of what's the most exciting part. I think it's all exciting. I like working with retirees because I hate to see people save up all that money only to see it wasted away in inflation, taxation, and maybe they don't realize, the sequence of returns risk, that being in the retirement space, when you 5 years before retirement and into retirement and 5 years after, if you lose 20 to 40% in the market, you're not likely to make that up for 5 to 10 years maybe. And then the data out there shows about a 7-year makeup window. And, we don't know if the precipice of 2008 crash is upon us. This administration is only going to be around for a while. Taxes, in my view, are going to go up, income taxes. They did play a little bit with the estate tax limitations or thresholds, but many people, I have clients in the $30 million net worth range, and they didn't think they were going to be there. And now they know that business they have, they're pre-retirement by about 4 or 5 years, and they realize it's 60 years old. By the time I retire, I may have a $50 million net worth. I'm going to pass it on to my children. Where are they going to pay that estate tax? Boom. So life insurance is a huge way to do that. Premium finance is the way we call that. It's a specialty area for the very wealthy. So, and the not so wealthy, we can work with lesser degrees of wealth. What we don't like to do is set people up for failure. We want to make sure they're going to be able to fund these things, that they have the liquidity and the asset base to do that. But back on retirees and pre-retirees, so a 401k can be a time bomb as well. I mean, let's say you have $500,000 or $1 million in a 401k. Well, if you don't have a succession plan where you're going to figure out how you get into that Roth conversion idea where you start moving money into a Roth, and people are familiar with that now more than they used to be. So pay those taxes now, because if you believe taxes are going up, back to this idea of make life less taxing, you can pay those taxes now instead of later when you're closer or already in retirement using a conversion strategy. And it gets a little complex. Conversions are not the best for everybody. You have to do the analytics, and we do that for them.
Yeah, no, you bring out a great point. Again, there are many different strategies. It just all depends how you go and, set that up. Now, listen, you mentioned you're 74. You don't look anything like 74. What I know, somebody 74. 72. All right. Sorry. I apologize. 72. I'm not trying to make you older. You look a lot younger. I mean, I would be thinking you're in your, late 50s, maybe early 60s. So you look great. But listen, if you had to distill the mission that you have and that you're on into one sentence, what would that be?
Well, I would say my life learning, first of all, I raised a large family. So believe it or not, I have 11 children and 25 grandchildren. Wow. So I have single income. So I had to hit it and get it most of my life. And I didn't accumulate a lot of wealth when I was younger because we had a large family and I got them all through school. I have attorneys and nurse practitioner children and accomplished in every way, tradesmen, you name it. I have a wide variety. I had 5 sons and 6 daughters. And so we focused on teaching them entrepreneurial skills. We taught them how to think like a business person, and I think that's so much more important today. If you would say what I'm passionate about, it's, you've got to be the CEO of your family. as a patriarch, matriarch, right? And then and it doesn't mean you have to have a business or be self-employed, but you have to think about it like a business. And you have to think legacy if you really want to do something over the long term for generations to come. So that's what I get excited about. That's what private family banking, how I got started with private family banking. And my personal experience is, though I was always very conscientious because I was single income with a large family. I went into business in 2000, the year 2000, right after the big Y2K thing. So I got an opportunity to go into business. God opened a door, and I flew out the window and took the opportunity. But while I was making all that money, I didn't really have a good way of capital conservancy. So I learned a hard lesson, and I didn't invest enough in marketing. So that's kind of why I'm here today. Of course, this is about your clients and your listeners rather. But it's an opportunity for me to talk about what we do. And when you're always marketing and selling, you present yourself. If I would say the other key thing besides understanding money, cash, and liquidity is understanding sales. If you can teach your family salesmanship, they can do anything. If you don't know how to communicate an idea and transfer an idea into action, you're not going to be very good at much in life. So that's the way I always handle it, and that's what I've always lived by. I don't know. The Lord has blessed me by looking young. I feel young. I'm active. I play a lot of golf, and I have a ranch here, so I'm out working on the ranch a lot. I just moved a bunch of cattle over to. The cattle prices are way up right now, so we're doing really well. We're happy. And we didn't get any rain against this year in central South Texas, South Central Texas, so we have to kind of get the herd down. But anyway, that's a lot to say.
Wow. Listen, it's awesome to hear about your family, and you must have figured out a couple of things out. So it looks like, everybody's successful, everybody's doing well. But hey, you know what? Life is not about just everything going perfect, right? I mean, if that was, I think we would be pathetic human beings if everything always worked out the way that we wanted, right? I think sometimes adversity comes in to actually shape us into into the person that we need to become, right?
It's funny you said that. My daughter just printed off something. She runs my cattle business. She also has her own business. She has a flower farm out here at a ranch. She sells and raises fresh flowers and ships around the country and does weddings and everything. But she printed this out and left it. She probably wanted to take it with her, but it was on my desk. She says she printed out a quote: "Hardship doesn't mean you're losing. It means you're still in the fight." And so, back to I feel I'm still in the fight, and that's what keeps me active. And we always did a lot of music in our family too. My kids were all musically trained, and some were very accomplished and professionals. And I wound up being an orchestra conductor. I was a studied symphony player myself, and not at a super professional level, but I took that in my 50s, and I did become an orchestra conductor. And that also kept me active. And it's the creative part. I think you have to have some outlets. It's not just about stacking up money. You have to live a fully orbed life, but it does take money. Money's important, and let's not forget it.
Listen, here in North America, outside of oxygen, you pretty well got to pay for everything, even water. Like, it comes out of the tap maybe, but you got to pay for it, right? So you can't really go to a river and drink from a river somewhere. Wouldn't advise that. So, but outside of oxygen, you do need money. And again, finding ways how to make, and this was the idea of the podcast, Make Life Less Taxing, is not just about money. There is other taxing things that are happening in our life when it comes down to, our thinking, emotionally and where we're at. So it really comes down to making sure that things are, set up properly that way, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people do buy upon emotion. And the problem with that is if the emotion is out of kilter with reality, you can do some really crazy things with your money.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. So what kind of people you work with most often?
So I have believe it or not, a pretty vast array. My youngest client was 18 years old, and he had been self-employed with his father and saved up $30,000, and we started a banking system for him. He's now 21 and married, and he's got, I don't know, quite a bit of money in there. His dad is big into this too. All the way up to 75 years old. One of my banking clients was 75. He got remarried to a 29-year-old, and he figured he better get some life insurance, and he better figure out how to utilize his money.
The family. Yeah.
It's amazing. And then the other part of it, of course, is the retirement and pre-retirement community. And then the third bucket is our very wealthy clients, and we do a lot of that by referral. We don't mass market that because it's
Yeah.
not that kind of a thing. People have to know a little bit about you and trust you when you're talking about millions of dollars. But yeah, my clients, in the center of it though is probably that 35 to 50-year-old in the private family banking side. They may have some money in a 401k. We teach them how to leverage that. We also, set them up to do their own financing so that they can buy houses, do real estate. I do real estate with my private family bank. And, since in about 5, 6 years, I wound up having about $360,000 in cash value. So you can
Mhm.
do your own lending at least for
Yeah.
down payments if you're going to do multiple investments.
Yeah. Oh, no, that sounds really interesting. Now, when someone comes to you, what's usually going on in their life or finances for them to really reach out and have a conversation with you?
No, it's either one or two things. It's either they have always felt like they're behind the curve and they want to really get a solid budget and a capitalization, saving money in place on a consistent basis, or they've saved some money, but they're not leveraging it. They're not utilizing that money. They feel like they're standing still. You know,
Oh, okay. So when it comes down to, so when they come to you, what kind of financial worries or questions do you kind of hear the most when someone does come to you?
well, many times, of course, in the retirement community, they're worried about losing their money in the stock market. And in these models that we use, they get a guaranteed return, they get leverage on their money. If you're into the annuity space, you can get a lifelong income, you can get guaranteed returns with an upside in the market if you used a fixed index annuity. So there's lots of things really about security, safety, and getting the leveraging. For the younger people, I tell them you have the advantage of youth because the
Hmm.
time value of money and the value of, Albert Einstein said that compound interest was the eighth wonder of the world. Either you understand compound interest or it will understand you. And that's what the banks leverage, right? They leverage compound interest and
Yeah.
they do it, the fractional reserve banking system is the biggest unknown secret. We all should be a banker. Well, we can't do what the banks do exactly, but we can emulate that by leveraging our money. And so uninterrupted compound interest, I used to teach seminars live, and here's a little thing most people don't know. And this is an extreme example, but it shows you the power of compounding. If you take a penny a day for
Hmm.
31 days and you double it, you'll have $5.3 million at the end of 31 days. Now, where are we going to find a way unless we're doing Bitcoin? Of course, Bitcoin's fallen on a little bit of hard times at the moment. But, where are you going to find a way to double your money every day? Well, you're not. But the idea is extrapolated over whatever length of time. If you have continuous, uninterrupted compound interest, eventually you're going to be a winner. And that's what our system does. It never loses money. It never backtracks because you're always getting compounding. And so,
Yeah.
1.1 times 1.1 times 1.1, whatever your interest rate is, 1.05, whatever, when that compounds, the power of compound interest is just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. You do bring a
Especially if
great
you can
point.
do it especially if you can do it tax deferred or tax
Yeah.
protected, right? Yeah.
Oh, exactly. That's again, I think the biggest thing is not only understanding the principle, but again, then dual purposing and figure out how you can actually maximize it, that way. Now, when people start to realize their retirement savings might not be as protected as they assumed, uh, kind of what are the emotions that tend to kind of happen? Like, is there some shifts and things that they kind of have to see and start to realize that maybe they need to get more handle on their future and financial kind of assets that they have?
Yeah, I think that it is back to your point earlier about emotions. So I'm going through it with clients right now. I had a client with, some words around $3 million in retirement savings. And frankly, he was happy to stay in the market, and he had $2.4 million of that 3 million in the market, and he was 60 years old. I said, well, he said, well, I'm getting 11%. I said, well, do you think that that's going to continue? And you have to get them to stop and ponder that question. And he believes he's
Yeah.
going to continue that. at 60 years old, if you want to retire and you want to conserve your capital, I just don't think having all of your money. Now, we might take half of that and put it in something that's going to give him a more fixed return or guaranteed income for life, whatever he's looking for. But people with more than, I would say more than $1 million, they're a little tougher because they've made that money and they feel like things are going to continue and their risk tolerance is a little higher. But I think age plays into that. And then the investor psychology, of course, we're all a little different. Some people are more risk adverse. So I think in general, retirees and pre-retirees should be risk adverse. And we don't know what's going to happen in the market right now.
Yeah.
Things are a little bit topsy-turvy.
Yeah, no, again, it's just knowing when is the right time for you to be doing what you're doing. And again, this
Yep.
often when you're the consumer, you kind of don't see the difference between the forest and the trees, right? They're kind of a little bit too much into the weeds, and the emotions are riding really high. When they do work with an advisor, you can give them a bit more of a different perspective and make them think and ponder and ask a little bit different question.
Right. Right. And like I say, I'm in the insurance and annuity space, but I do partner. I have an advisor team at my disposal. I don't manage assets under management as is known AUM, but I certainly have people that can do that. So I'm not opposed to taking somebody and putting them with one of our advisors, but I personally don't do that work. But
Yeah.
some of their portfolio, they need to look at something a little more secure. And again, I go back to the younger families. I stress to these guys, do you realize that I think the statistics are north of 60% of men are underinsured with life insurance?
Mm.
It's an alarming number. In other words, if I'm 40 years old and I've got 5 kids at home or 3 kids or whatever, and my wife hasn't worked or she's working maybe a part-time or whatever, and I pass away, I get hit by the next bus. My wife, $1 million from my wife's not really gonna make it for the rest of her life. And so I don't want my widow having to hurry up and get remarried because of the money. That's a terrible proposition, right? And
Yeah.
I don't want my kids to go without. So life insurance, you can go to, I think it's lifehappens.org. It's a free site. You can do your life, what they call human life value calculation there and find out what you're really insurable for based on your assets and what you earn. Most men should be insured between $4 and $6 million of life insurance. Well, most people are lucky to have a $500,000 to $1 million. And so even if you got 2 million, you'd be better off. And that's a life insurance salesman talking for sure. But I believe it. I believe
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
No, it's a matter of educating individuals and what's happening, right? And you talk a lot about building for the next generation, not just for the next few years. Why is that so important to you?
Well, it's always been important to me. I believe that that's part of my calling in my family, and I've invested in my children not only in skill building, but I've helped them out. And I have multi residents on my property here, and some of the children live here back about a quarter of a mile back on our land. And I just think it's healthy. First of all, the economy is no good without families. I mean, what are you going to do? And there is a birth rate deficit worldwide. Japan's in a horrible shape. They can't even regenerate the population so they got a bunch of old people getting older and more old people coming. So we do have a problem in cultures where we have to have some children come up. And so I'm big on that. Obviously, we had 11. That was, God is in charge of that. But we're doing our fair share. But, birth rates are down, and you're going to have a bunch of people that maybe have a lot of assets and nobody to pass it on to. And it really doesn't generate an economy that's going to survive. So hopefully, over the years, we'll see that remedied. And we hope we won't grow totally by bringing other people into the country. But, it's all in there. It's all in the mix.
Yeah. So, and you're also mentioning, and I think this is where it comes down to, you're, building for the next generation or the next few years. How does that really help families to start moving from the short-term thinking to a little bit more of a long-term thinking and maybe even legacy mindset?
No,
I think
yeah.
often,
Yeah, that's the idea of the family office concept. And so I was privileged to sponsor a conference in Newport, Rhode Island that last summer in July with probably there was, I don't know, 500 families there worth over $50 million each. And those people get it. Those people create a framework of a family office. Now, a lot of them are growing. Some of them are new to it. Some of them got started late, but they're really concerned about the future. And they want to be like, there was one gentleman got up there. He married a younger woman. He had three daughters. They were in their teens, and he had them integrated into the business. They were learning real estate development. They were learning leasehold improvements. They were learning how what their client base was and what the location, how important location was in commercial real estate. It was fascinating. They were one of the keynote panel speakers, rather. It was great. And so I think again, I don't know, everybody's, if you're living just for today, you can be as hedonistic as you want. I think the end that, money and time and luxuries can all be pretty empty. Yeah, you have to have a view for other people in your family or whoever you want to invest in.
Yeah. Well, there always got to be a purpose, right? There's got to be a why.
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Unfortunately, people have somewhat become complacent. They don't know why. I mean, often when, advisors ask, the question, why did you do that particular thing? Or why did you buy that? Why do you own it? Unfortunately, people, they don't know why. They just did it because somebody told them, or they just thought it was a good idea, but did not really know exactly why they were doing that. So it's important to really get clear on why you're doing something or why you have something, right?
Yeah, Simon Sinek, he wrote the book about the why. Yeah. I saw him as a keynote speaker live many years ago. He's been around a while now. And a friend of mine out of Nashville, he said, well, it's not just about your why, it's about your skills too. So you have to couple practical development with the why. You just can't have a vision and say this is what I'm going to do. Then how do we then make that a practical program of progress and accomplishment, and how do we build the skills and get the team together that's going to do it, right? Dan Sullivan, famous business coach, wrote, it's not how, but who. In other words, you can know all the processes, but if you don't have a team, the who that's going to come along. And as a small entrepreneur, I've always looked for talent where I can lean on somebody. That's why I partner so much, because I don't have to know it all. But if I know somebody that knows more than I do in an area that I want to get involved in, I bring them into the equation. It's an awesome
100%.
leverage.
Well, you're going to like this quote, and I use it often, and I'm going to use it in here. 50% of a watermelon is always more than 100% of a grape.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And that's what it comes out. And I'm even going like, heck, even 5% of a watermelon or 10% is still more than a grape. And unfortunately, sometimes people think like they grab their little grape and they're holding it so close to their chest. And it's like, hey, you got to let it go of it, right? That's how they catch, or is it the monkeys on an island somewhere? That's how they catch them. They put peanuts inside of a bottle and the monkey grabs the peanut, doesn't realize that they're caught. All they have to do is let go of the peanut, but they will not get let go of the peanut because they want it, right? So
when I was consulting, I used to tell the story about the baby elephant versus the adult elephant. And why don't you have to chain up adult elephants? Because they chain them up as babies and they train them that they're on a chain, and so their world is already subconsciously limited to that. And so the baby elephant will run wild and do crazy things, but the adult elephant will stand in place because they think they're roped into that space. We can be a little bit like that. Yeah. And I've always been a collaborator, and starting my small consultancy, I always partnered up with people, and I like to see all boats rise. I'm a team player, and I love the energy I get from other people and the creativity, and I think that's all part of it too. So, but money always does play into that, right? I mean, again, some of the most unhappy people have a stack full of money and they got nothing going. I mean, I'm like I say, I'm not I don't want to get a hair shirt and live in poverty just to make myself happy. I think money's great, but you've got to have purpose. Back to what you said, it's all about purpose, right? The purpose-driven life type of thing. Yeah,
it's purpose, and you also mentioned something like life is a team sport, right? Like there isn't anybody that can say that they're self-made. Because it's like, oh, hold on, you did your own shoes, like you sew in your own clothes, and no, you did not. So you can't say that you've made, unless you're running around naked all the time, which I don't believe anybody is. You can't really say that you were made, self-made. And even at that point, you didn't born yourself. Let's not get into that, right? So
it was interesting when I had that conference I sponsored in July in Newport. That's one speaker. He came to this country when he was 14 years old. His dad sent him to America, and he came from another country at 14 years old, sent him to New York, and he figured out how to, he had to depend
Oh,
on other people. And he
yeah.
became, I mean, I think he's got to be worth $250 million or whatever. I don't really know his net worth totally, but I can estimate it. But here's a guy who had you could call it bootstrap, but he certainly had to suffer through all those trenches, that idea of adversity, growing character. Now you can grow bad character, but you can also grow good character. And that's what we
Yeah.
hope for. And I think, wealth and riches in the hands of a fool are much folly. We have to think about, what are we as a culture, and are we just, money grubbing maniacs? And of course, the internet has changed so many things around. You can become a very wealthy person at a very young age. And we, by the way, in our legacy planning, we do run into young entrepreneurs that are 25 and are worth, multi-millions or more of, maybe upwards to $1 billion because of what they've done in the tech side. So those people are special in many ways, but they don't always get great counsel. And it's not just about earning more; it's about what are you doing with that money? What are you doing? Where are you going to go? And you read these tragedies about these young people. It's sad, but I've lived a full life. I have no complaints, and I'm in it. I'm in it to the end.
Well, you mentioned multi-generational wealth. And how does that thinking, because it's a little bit different thinking, right? Like often people think about, hey, you know what, I'm just going to go get money, and so I've got enough to retire, and then that's it. But when you start this whole idea of multi-generational, and we were talking more than one, maybe two or three or four generations, how does that kind of shift the perspective with the people that you work with?
Well, that's good for Americans. I always use the story. So I work with a lot of younger families that are maybe again in their 30s and 40s. They have children, and they've got this idea. Okay, I got to have this money. I'm going to send my kid to college, and they're going to go away and leave the family. Well, there's a certain leave and cleave mentality, if you will, there. But what happened to the idea of family working together and staying together? And so I'm reminded when I was my oldest son, he's now an accomplished attorney, he's 44 years old. He was a young child, and I got him involved in playing baseball. And I became the coach on the team. And one of the kids on our team was Vietnamese, and so he played baseball. He was pretty good, but he needed a ride back and forth to his house for practice. So I would go pick him up. And I arrived at his home, and they were renting a house. And I think they had 4 families living in that house. Take the clock forward 10 more years. You know what they did? They worked together as a family. They came here from Vietnam. They bought like 7-Eleven convenience stores. And 10 years later, they were very wealthy and well known in the community because they hung together and they raised their kids to be involved in a business. That story stuck with me a long time. And I think most Americans, they have this very individualistic, and kids think, well, I got to go make it on my own. I want to depend on dad. We got to get away from that. A child
Yeah.
like my son lives in one of my properties here. And, even as much as I raised him, I had to get him and his new wife to see, okay, look, you can go rent somewhere else, or you can be part of this. And look at the leg up you have. And then once the lights
Yeah.
came on, they're like, wow, why would we go anywhere else? And he has his own business. We're not integrated. Now, he does work
Yeah.
with me part-time in private family banking, but his mainstream income is he's a developer builder. But, it has to do with culture. It has to do, there's no, I mean, look at the Great Depression. I mean, my parents were on the cusp of that. My wife's parents were in the Great Depression. They all had to join together. For the
Yeah.
average person, there was no way out on your own. And out of
Yeah.
that came a very strong, I mean, they call it whatever generation. Well, that part of that was the way they had to work together. And when you have
Yeah.
adversity and you have to work with other people, you learn coping skills, you learn team building skills, you learn communication skills. One of my biggest things for my kids was you need to learn to write and how to speak publicly. And so I always put them in situations where they had to write a white paper of sorts at their level, and they had to present it, and they had to public speak. And part of that was through music too. And when music, I like in sports, professional sports or competitive sports, and music in this way. When you're a soloist, there's no groupthink. There's no way out. It's either you can perform. And so sometimes we have to put
Yeah.
ourselves into conditions where we have to perform to a standard, and that breeds a tremendous amount of confidence, and it builds your character. And
Yeah.
confidence and character go together with great integrity. So that's part of it. You have to have a good moral foundation.
Yeah. No, you bring a lot of great points, and uh, again, it's that having that community, having that. Yeah, we have kind of lost that sense. I'm originally from Czechoslovakia. I was born in Czechoslovakia,
Oh,
and there was a lot. Like part of it was socioeconomics, but yeah, you come here, and when we came here, it was like, oh well, you know what, your son or daughter is 18, you kick him out of the house, and it's
yeah,
kind of like it
crazy.
doesn't have to work like that. Again, it's kind of what people have gone and used to, and they kick him out of the house just so that they can go and move in when they're 26 or 30, and then they're unemployed and then living in the basement, right? Well, you did really
Well,
well for
yeah.
yourself, right?
And
So,
unfortunately, right now, that's exactly, you made a good point. Right now, the young men are finding they can't afford to even buy these homes. So I don't think it's any shame to collaborate with your parents or
oh,
your brothers and sisters. And we've lost
yeah,
that in our culture. And I think the economy right now has driven a lot of young couples to where they realize they really can't. I mean, the house price, I'm south of Austin, Texas. The house prices are ridiculous. I mean, the land
yeah,
values. I'm glad I bought my ranch when I did. I mean, it's just crazy. So yeah,
yeah.
good point.
No, those are the things. Now, I know you're a man of faith. How does that really influence your work or the way that you show up for your clients?
Well, not every one of my clients is a faith-based person, but I support everybody. But first of all, it has to do with integrity, and it has to do with the professionalism of your practice. And where appropriate, I guide them biblically into how to think about money and wealth and family and multi-generational planning. I actually have a course that's available out there with biblically based finances, and it does bear upon it, and I have to take measure of where the person's at. But and I mean, I've had people ask me for prayer, and I've had people that are facing tremendous challenges medically, physically, financially, and so it does become almost sometimes a counseling ministry. You really get down to the brass tacks with people where they're hurting. So it's important to me.
Yeah, no, and again, you bring a good point. You're basing a lot of your things on principles and biblical principles, but principles are everlasting. Like they don't change. Kind of like the best
Right.
one. I use the principle of gravity, right? Like, listen, it works for everybody. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not, but if you're on top of the building and you go off, it doesn't matter if you're, tall, thin, small, it doesn't matter whatever race you're in, you're going to hit the ground, right?
That's right.
And
That's
that's a
right.
principle. So if you don't know that about gravity, yeah, you might be challenged, right? You might
Yeah.
injure yourself. And I think the same thing when it comes down to a lot of financial principles. And a lot of financial principles are based on the biblical concept and that part of it. So,
Yeah, the Bible says it's the love of money that's the root of many evils. It's not money. And
right,
if you just read the book of Ecclesiastes or look in Lamentations and look at those writings, the book of Ecclesiastes, say there's nothing new under the sun, and then Solomon laments about riches and wealth, and because he didn't have that purpose, in the end, he went with the pagan wives, and he God blessed his wisdom early on, and then but at the end of his life wasn't so great. And so we have to be careful. But yeah, there's lots in the Bible about money. It talks more about money than sin. That's an amazing thing.
there might be a reason for that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes,
when
sir.
you think about legacy, what do you want, your business and what you're building and your life to really stand for?
Yeah. So, my hope is that Lord will give me more years to where I can keep, because I work from home, and it's mostly now virtual, that I can invest in more people, and that excuse me, my wife and I can continue to help our children and grandchildren. And we got a lot of them, and so they have all kinds of ways we can help them. I did bring my one of my younger sons into the business part time, and I have a son-in-law that also worked with me. So we're starting that. We're not where we want to be, and so this is a big pivot year where I'm trying to take the business to a new level to where I can do more with them and bring them more in. And then my daughter too as well, but she may get married one of these days. So it depends on what her husband does. But I've only got one unmarried daughter, so she's 22. So I was 50 when she was born. My wife was 46, so we were late bloomers there.
Well, it worked out well for you. Well, I was going to
Yes.
ask what's kind of the next thing you're building or learning, and it feels like you kind of have expanding the business and bringing
Yes.
some of your kids into it
Family.
and kind of
Absolutely.
expanding from there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's kind of the next chapter and the mission that you're on. No, it
Yes.
sounds like you're kind of building your own family office, meaning that you really have a big family that's building an office.
Yeah, well, the partner I work with in the premium finance life insurance space, it's a family business, but they've been in it for 30 years. His dad's a
Mm,
little older than me, 74, and it's a tremendous thing. It's him and his two brothers, his stepmother, and I think they only have one or two key employees that are outside the family,
mm,
and they do marvelous work. It's amazing some of the things they do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's another biblical almost principle when it comes down to, having the family business and having it that way, right? I mean, why do you go outside when you can kind of keep it a little bit more in the family and being able to go and achieve what, the mission and vision that God has for your life?
Yes.
So
Amen. Yes,
that's
sir.
right. Well, listen, as we're wrapping up, I have four, I call them quick fire questions. The first one is, what's a book that really shaped your thinking?
Well, other than the Bible, I would say Jim Collins's book on, well, I'm gapping on the name, um, but Jim Collins, you look up the author Jim Collins, he has one on business.
Mm,
I follow Seth Godin quite a bit, Godin, and I read The Purple Cow a long time ago about product development and creativity. And one that I'm just looking at, so I've just it's the Who Not the Who Not How is a good one by
uh-huh.
Dan Sullivan, and of course his partner is
That's
Dr.
the
Ben
Ben Hardy.
Hardy. Yeah, Ben
Yeah.
Hardy's got a new one coming out. So I was at church Sunday, and one of my senior buddies there was on a flight back. He's a businessman here in the area. And he has business in Florida. And he came back and he said, "You'll never guess who I sat next to on the plane." He said, "Do you know Dr. Benjamin Hardy?" I said, "I sure do by his book. Yeah, about your
Yeah.
future self. He wrote one about your future self now. I'd encourage, that's a really good read because
Yeah.
it gets you to think about, if I think I'm going to wind up out here, I better start thinking about those things now. And he's writing a new book about business scaling, and he shared
Yeah.
some of it. It's going to be coming out soon.
Yeah, I think well he wrote also with Dan Sullivan took the idea of the 10x or
10X.
10
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah 10x is faster than 2x or something. I can't remember. Yeah, that
Yes.
was another
Yeah.
another great book with
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
but no that's great. Is the morning routine or a daily habit that you can't live without?
Well, right now it's golf. So what I do, out of my acreage here, I have my own driving range. So I can't run because I got a bad hip, but I can play golf. And so I get out every day, and it's more for the movement, and I
Yeah.
stretch yeah. So that's it for me. Of course, I get up earlier and I pray and I read my Bible
Yeah.
and think about other people and that thing. But in terms of personal habits, yeah, it's a great. I've just feel great this
Yeah.
last year. It's really been.
Well, no, it's all about motion and stretching and all of that stuff. The older you get, right? It's
It
having
is.
that ability is very important because a lot of
It
people they
is.
just kind of sit and then they start, kind of
Uh,
shrinking on
And
themselves.
in the financial business, we do a lot of sitting. So I break up my day with
Yeah,
activities like that. Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Yep.
What's one bucket list that you haven't checked off yet?
So we've always wanted to go to Alaska.
Hmm.
So we're kind of trying to plan a trip up there. And so I don't know if we'll do a cruise or we'll just fly up to Seattle and go from there. But yeah, my
Yeah,
wife and I.
no, that sounds exciting. What's a surprising hobby or interest that really recharges you outside of the business? So I know you mentioned golf already. Is there anything else,
Yeah.
or is golf
Yeah, fishing. Fishing's my
fishing?
other passion. So we live pretty close. We're about 3 hours from the coast. So we like to go down to Corpus Christi and fish. And I love ocean. I like freshwater fishing too. So, but that's my other avocation.
Okay,
And
excellent.
music. I still play, and I'm actually gonna get it do some choral conducting here in the next year or so, and so I'm excited about that again.
Awesome. That sounds exciting. I've got one last question. I called it a hard one. Fast forward to the end of your life and imagine that people forgot everything that you ever taught them or showed them, but they do remember one message from you. What would you want that message to be?
My message would be they remember that you're never totally sanctified, that there's always more to do in your life on becoming holy. God is thrice holy. We fall far short. And so never give up your progress and don't think you've arrived.
That's great. Wow, what a powerful and perspective shifting conversation, Chuck. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. Where can people find out more about you and the work that you do?
They can go to privatefamilybanking.com, and I'll be on that website. They certainly can email me at chuck@privatefamilybanking.com.
Perfect. So if you're listening, be sure to check out Chuck's website and get in contact with him. Again, to learn how you can build lasting wealth, tax-efficient wealth for your future and future generations. Chuck, thank you so much again for your time and your message. And remember, making life less taxing isn't just about money. It's about freedom, clarity, and purpose. Keep building wealth, keep protecting your legacy, and keep living the untaxable lifestyle. We'll see you next time on the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Chuck, thank you again.
Thank you, my friend Daniel.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Be sure to check out our other top advisor interviews at makelifilesstaxingpodcast.com.